In this video, I'm going to look at getting an array of objects and making the objects from a class. And been doing this a number of times now, but this time we're going to fetch the data from an external data file. The code for this can be found at the URL seen here. So this is a sequence, and they sort of all do the same thing, and we just sort of handle it behind the scenes a little bit differently each time. Say, drop down list of horror movies, and we get some information about those horror movies. So that's what it looks like. So here's the HTML. There's a reference to a style sheet. The main thing in the style sheet was it was a grid. So we use the funny font that I call the bleeding font, but it is here. There was a local TTF for it. And then this was mostly the grid style that we saw here. So that's the CSS. The HTML is these divs, again, that make up that grid. Here's a drop-down list with empty, no options in it. Here's an image for the movie poster, but with no source. Here's a span for the rank with no data in there. Here's another span for the rating. Here's some span for the stars. How many, if I convert the rating to stars, how many stars is it? And a description of the movie. And then I have two links to the JS code for the class, and then another JavaScript file that uses that class. So that is the HTML. The class is just starts with the keyword class. It's a horror movie. Here's a constructor that sets all these properties, rank, rating, title, image, how many people rated it, and the description. And then there's a method here. So the ratings in these files are numbers like 8.7, 8.5, things like that. And then this method down here just converts that into stars. And so I can have 4 stars or 3.5 stars or 3 stars. So sort of ugly looking little method, but just to make sure, you realize that a class can have data and methods. Okay. The big thing that's different in this version versus some previous versions is I'm going to get the data from a data file. Here's my array initialized, and I'm going to fill up with movie objects. I am adding a change event listener called and the function that's going to handle it will be called choose movie. We'll see that below. Okay. So now here is, let me get rid of the Explorer. Here is the reading the external file. So one thing I should point out here was that I was using let me go out here and I have it in downloads. And if I try to, well, let me just open that in downloads, you see it doesn't open properly if I just click on it. And but if I am in Visual Studio Code and I need to be in the HTML, I need to reopen the HTML here. And if I open the HTML with a live server, it opens. This is because I'm reading a local file, and there are typically security measures in place that will not allow you to read a local file, and it wants you to be on a server, or in this case, pretend you're on a server. And so I was over in Visual Studio Code. If I have the extensions, I can search. I already have it, but I'll start going live server. And here is the extension I use. And you can see by the little gear symbol here that I've installed it. And that's what's allowing me to sort of pretend I'm a server, open with the live server. And then you can see here, it starts with the 127.0.0.1 and then a port of 5500 and so on. So that is the pretending that I'm a server and then getting past those security measures to read the local data file. Okay, so I was in the JavaScript, the second JavaScript, and I'm reading. So there is, I just have a reference to the data file and without anything else. So that means it is sort of a sibling. So it means it's in the same folder. Let me close my extensions. So it means it's in the same folder as the JavaScript file in this case. And then so we're fetching that and we're going out and getting some resource. In this case, the resource is a local data file, so it's very close and it's going to be very fast. But we may use the same method to go out to the internet and get a resource, and the resource may be large. In either way, then it can possibly take some time. So when we are fetching, we've got to sort of not. It's not going to. The code won't necessarily wait until that's done. There will be sort of some asynchronous possibilities of the code. So we must, anything that relies on the data that we're fetching has to be, we have these then. So fetch this data, and then when it comes back, do something. So we have to make a division between what part of the program must wait and what part can move on. So this we have to see where these thens end. So I can do a collapsing. So here's the fetch, then catch. So this one was a little bit larger. And then I have, so this will be all of the getting the data, parsing the data, loading up the drop-down list. I have the handling, the choosing of a movie, the choose movie event handler. I have that outside. All of that fetch and then and catch. And that was all right because there were no options to choose. So you can't call this event, the event that calls this function does not happen until the drop-down list gets filled. So I don't have to worry that this is outside of that. This depends on the data, but it's impossible to call this function given how it's called until that data happens, until that data is loaded. Okay, and this is for making stars, 3.5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, and that is also, again, never going to be called on and needed until there are actually movies loaded up. Okay, so that's that important division between when you're fetching a file, the sort of synchronous part and the asynchronous part. So the asynchronous part is the stuff that you can put outside and run ahead and do, or in this case, you don't have to worry about it ever being called until the resource is loaded and dealt with. Okay. So back to 10. We are fetching this text file, which is a local text file. And this approach will make maybe a little more sense if we talk about going out, because you can use the same method to go out to the internet and get an internet resource. And then when you get an internet resource, there is a very sort of full-bodied response where you might get that whether the response failed, like if you go to get a web page, it was, was it Are you applying okay, or did you not find the page, or did it take too long, or were you redirected? There are all sorts of possible responses. Um, and then there's the actual, like if it was a successful response, then the stuff you get and what you want to do with it. So that's why this then we have sort of a two-part then. And one of the first one is sort of stripping away anything but the actual text we want. So there might be, statuses and okays and what have you that we don't want. So that's what comes out of the first then. And we just return in this case, the text of the response. So we made some request for something. There's going to be a response. When there's a response, we're going to sort of forward the text of that response, which is the text of the file. And let me have a peek at that file. Here's the file, and it's just all in one line. We'll do better the next time, but this is just harking back to what we've done before. So we have all this data on one file. Between pieces of data about a movie like Psycho, we have vertical bars. And then between one movie and the next, we have pound signs or hashtags. Okay. So we go out to get the resource, which is a local resource, but we go out to get a resource. There may be some more complicated response of some kind of status and what have you, but then we finally get to what we want, the text, and we push that forward to the next then. And now what's going to come in there is the text of the data file. And pardon. And that gets handed over as the data. And then, so our second then here is going to receive the data, and then that's what we're going to sort of work with. So it's the argument of some function here, but it's the data in the file, and that's what I will begin. So I take that data and parse it on the pound sign. That gets me the movies, so that separates out all the stuff about Psycho from about Alien and so on. And then I'm looping over those movies. I called it horror data lines, and I'm looping over those. And I do the second split on the vertical bar that breaks it up into the individual things like the rank and the rating and the title. And then because my class, all those individual pieces of data are in the class and they're in the same order, I can say, so when I split all the information about Psycho on a vertical bar, subdata 0, subdata 1, subdata 2, all those pieces happen to be in the order that they needed to be in my class. So I just set it up that way, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's just convenient. So this establishes, so here you see the keyword new and the name of our class horror movie. So this is us making an element, making an object of our class, and then adding that as an element to our array of objects. Here's going to the page and grabbing the select, looping through the movies, making an option, making the text of the option the title of the movie. So L is the element. So we're looping over an array of movie objects. So element is a movie object. And so I'm making, as I loop through, I'm making a new option. I'm making the title of my option, the text of my option, the title of my movie. I'm making the value, the index, and I'm adding that option. This could also be a pen child. I'm triggering a new event. So all the stuff I do when I choose a movie will also happen the first time when this comes. But this has to be, this is the last thing that has to be in the then. This is me choosing a movie. So there must be a movie for me to choose. Now, when I have a change event, then I can come out and this defines what I'm going to do. And again, that can be, although that relies on data that was established by reading the file, I can never get to this event. I can never get to this function until I've read the data and made the options. And so I don't have to worry. This function is allowed to be outside of all the fetching. So this is the drop-down list event handling method. Get the value from the drop-down list, and then my movies, my index. So my movies is an array of objects. My movie, my index is the object corresponding to the selected movie, and it has properties like image, which will become the source of the IMG, description, which will be the inner HTML of the div description, and so on. And then I have these little rating things where I'm converting ratings of like 8.6 to sort of 3.5 stars. So this is me getting a 3.5, and then this is me getting actual using font awesome sort of stars and half-filled stars and so on. And that's what's down here. This make stars is FA is font awesome and getting stars and half stars. Okay, and that's what I wanted to show you. The main new topic was the fetching, and you have to get to terms with this. I've been using the sort of live server all along, but now it's important. And what else? This notion of doing everything that involves the data in the fetch then sort of cycle. Okay, that's what I wanted to show you. Thanks much for your attention.